Thank you. Each presentation, we will have a little title slide before you present, and I emailed everyone a PDF of the actual program, but I'll also put that in the chat in just a little bit. All right, so as we get started, I want to just make some acknowledgements and also welcome. This is International Education Week at UNC Charlotte, so it's a fantastic time to do this TedXCraverRoad event. I want to first acknowledge Natalia Mija. She is a speaker in this TEDx program, as well as providing the technical support. So thank you so much, Natalia. Also, Meredith Roden provided the artwork, the media artwork, in the end of the PDF program. Check that out. I want to thank all my students in my Honors 3700 class for being good sports and being willing to present here at the TedXCraverRoad talk. To my colleagues who are presenting today and continue to daily inspire me with their work and their commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, and all those who were able to attend, I thank you for taking the time out today to do so. Your participation and your attendance and engagement means a lot, so thank you. To Assistant Provost Joel Gallegos and the Office of International Programs at UNC Charlotte, who provided funding for our TedXCraverRoad countdown, as well as to the UNC Charlotte Chancellor's Diversity Grant, which also provided funding for this event. So I wanted to start with just a thought to engage us in our time today, and that's this idea of triangulation. So if you are surveying, triangulation would be a way to get an accurate measurement of what you're surveying if you're doing land surveys. In data research, we use triangulation to make sure our findings are valid and reliable. And so the reason why I named TedXCraverRoad Craver Road is because Craver Road sits here in the UNC Charlotte, even though we can't be here today, we're on Zoom, in sort of a triangle between the Cato College of Education building, Office of International Programs sits right across the quad there, and then also the student union. And this represents to me how, in order to make progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, we need that triangulation of education, a global competencies and global understanding, but also students. We need the young people to be part of this effort as well. These are the impetus for action, for change, and to hopefully meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So I'm going to kick off our event by showing the actual kickoff countdown video that they have every single event show. And so take some time just to enjoy this, but also to listen closely to how the purposes and objectives of this countdown event. Here we go.
Welcome to TEDx Countdown. This event is one of more than 500 mainly virtual gatherings taking place over these days and weeks in over 90 countries, all part of Countdown's global launch. But what on earth is Countdown, and what are we hoping to achieve?
Countdown is a massive collaboration to bring together every citizen of planet Earth who wants to do something about the single biggest crisis we face. From wildfires to hurricanes to flooding, our destabilized climate is already causing terrible damage. But the good news is there are many, many people working with creativity and determination to help us find our way through.
TED has never attempted anything at this scale before. We couldn't have made Countdown happen without the amazing TEDx community, including those who are joining us for the first time. We also couldn't have done it without the incredible partnership with Lindsay's group, Future Stewards, which brings together many people and organizations right at the forefront of the battle against climate change. Honestly, seeing everyone come together to make today. Welcome to TEDx Countdown. This event is one of more than 500 mainly virtual gatherings taking place over these days and weeks in over 90 countries, all part of Countdown's global launch. Welcome to TED.
Being the most affected. And it's a crisis.
Our goal is that all of us will walk away with a clear picture of what it will take to tackle this terrifying problem. Because although it's really complicated, there's actually a simple way to think about it. We, as citizens, have to stop sending greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and we have to figure out ways of reabsorbing the excess emissions that are already up there. Picture it this way. Our beautiful planet is being overheated by a pollution blanket of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. When you zoom in, that pollution is coming from 5 major sectors: energy, transport, industry, food, and our misuse of nature. Scientists agree that we have to cut our emissions in half in the next 10 years. That's what Countdown means. Count emissions down. And at the same time that we're doing that, we're counting down to a clean, beautiful, exciting future.
What excites me most about Countdown is the chance to invite people everywhere to ask the same question. How can we make a difference? To discover that instead of feeling hopeless and helpless, we can actually do this. Yes, it's urgent. Yes, it's serious. But there's real momentum underway, not spoken about nearly enough. We are poised on the edge of a revolution in innovation and job creation. This is an amazing moment because we all get to decide. What do we stand for? Do we love ourselves and our home enough to preserve it for the future? I believe we do. It's at once a burden and a sacred privilege, and it's ours to do.
If you'll commit this time, we think this is a day you could remember for the rest of your lives. Thank you so much for being part of it. And so, let the countdown begin.
My apologies there for the delay. I was trying to send you all the PDF, but we now have a opening welcome from
Welcome to
Dr.
TEDx.
Joel Gallegos.
Good morning. My name is Joel Gallegos, and I'm the Assistant Provost for International Programs here at UNC Charlotte. And on behalf of our OIP, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2020 International Education Week, and specifically to this TedXCraverRoad Countdown event on raising awareness of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Each year, UNC Charlotte celebrates International Education Week as a reminder that faculty, staff, and most importantly, all of our students play a critical role in educating one another about the global village and our world's interconnectedness. While we recognize international education on the UNC Charlotte campus this specific week, it is a goal to celebrate and, most importantly, to amplify the value and the importance of international education throughout the entire year. UNC Charlotte has long recognized the value of celebrating cultural diversity, respecting and appreciating each other's differences, and better understanding the various cultures and peoples that create our international and global mosaic. On our campus, you might do this in a variety of ways. You might learn about various cultures and their various interconnected systems within and across those cultures. You may study international relations or foreign language. Perhaps you've attended an international festival. Perhaps you learn from international students and scholars in your classroom, or you may have had the wonderful opportunity to study abroad, perhaps a spring break, a semester, or an academic year. These are just a few of the international education opportunities offered, but I invite all of you to learn more about the broad range of activities that take place all year round. And why do we do this? Well, we believe that for those who are more culturally competent, we believe that for those who are more curious about the world around them, and for those who can genuinely and authentically empathize with others, not only will they contribute to a more educated and peaceful world, but but they will also better navigate a future career, which will invariably require you to connect across cultures and hopefully solve real world problems resulting in a better and a more sustainable future for all of us. When one considers the broadest value of international education, it's impossible to do so without also considering the Sustainable Development Goals. In reflecting on the importance of the world's poverty and hunger, health and education, gender equality, and peace and justice, among other goals, he's addressed our world's most pressing and challenging issues. And these issues extend well beyond borders, countries, or cultures. So as we think of the why of international education and the value of it, we must also think of how all of these activities help prepare and position all of us for that journey in responding to these enormous challenges that we all face. I wish you all a wonderful International Education Week and a wonderful session.
All right. Now I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Radhika Ayanagar, who is our keynote speaker. Radhika and I work together, and Radhika, I want to make sure you're here and you have co-hosting capabilities.
I'm here, but I have to
Perfect.
share the screen if I can.
Yes, I had given you co-host. So I'll let Radhika share a little bit more about her work as part of the Earth Institute at Columbia University. But I wanted to just tell you all that she recently won the very prestigious Early Career Faculty Award at Columbia University. It's my privilege to be able to have and welcome her to our TedXCraverRoad event. Thank you, Radhika.
Thank you, Eric. I'll share my screen. It's really an honor to be here today, and thank you, Eric, for inviting me to such an important panel and such an important, discussion that we are having. I'm already inspired, just given the preceding two speakers. I think they were completely spot on, and really happy to be joining this really important event. So my presentation actually starts from my story from Bhopal. 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy had devastating impacts on my hometown Bhopal, and there were more than 2,000 people who died instantaneously the night of December 3rd, and more than 300,000 people were physically handicapped going forward for many years. The gas got dissolved in our water. You can see the factory there. So lot of environmental crisis related situations happened in Bhopal. There were a lot of injustices that continued. There was international lawsuit that continued. And there were a lot of injustices that kept occurring in Bhopal due to this man-made disaster. Going forward, fast forwarding to 2020, so basically what we wanted to here we celebrated Diwali just very recently, 2 days back, and Delhi got choked with high levels of pollution from the Diwali firecrackers, as well as fireworks, as well as the burning of crops that usually happens. And again, this is really a big devastating environmental challenge that continues to haunt Delhi, and people keep wearing masks, and I think things are just going from bad to worse. So these things continue. So what can we do, and what is the missing link here? To me, the missing link is lack of implementation of this Sustainable Development Goals Target 4.7, which specifically talks about sustainable development and how education can promote sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles. So the implementation of this SDG target 4.7 has been very, very weak. What can we do? How can we actually promote sustainable development goal implementation target 4.7 has been very challenging. We are unfortunately living in a climate indifferent world. Even now, there are many classrooms in the United States that don't include climate change education. It has been a very contested topic, and the treatment has really been abysmal. There are many challenges there, and there are many classrooms and students who have not included this really important topic in the classrooms and in the teaching. So what can we do, and how can we improve this particular challenge, and how can we actually resolve it? Requires a lot of thinking and a lot of change of from what we had originally done. So it requires really a transformative change. It requires complete change of thinking. And here are some ideas on what this transformational change can be for sustainable development. It should not be treated as a dump of knowledge. It should connect to the communities and to all the citizens, using citizen science as a lens. It should not be lost from one grade to the other. I think it needs to continue throughout the lifetime. SDG 4.7 is all about lifelong learning, and so we need to continue this lifelong learning component. ESD should really have a soul, because right now, if it is so transactional in the classrooms, it has not led to the transformative change in behavior and in thinking that we were hoping. So really, if we need to build back better, we really need to find new ways of enhancing education in the classrooms and enhancing just lifelong learning opportunities as a part of education for sustainable development. Use music, use storytelling that travels intergenerationally, and then also use both sciences and social sciences as a part of climate change education. So I think these are some of the ways where we can transformationally bring ESD to the forefront. Also, just my last note is that I think the time is now, before we end up having more wildfires and more floods and more catastrophes, more hurricanes. This is the time to build back better, and this is the time to do things differently. So I hope that throughout this discussion today, we will be able to focus on how we can make education for sustainable development as a doable task. And it all starts from believing in SDG 4.7 and taking it forward. So thank you, Eric, for making me a part of this very interesting discussion. And as he has been really a colleague of mine, we work together for South Asian, and I give South Asian examples here. So I hope that our work continues, and I hope everyone here manages to take this education for sustainable development lens and think of what we can do in our own capacity to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Radhika. And we had some comments how ESD must have a soul, how powerful that is, and I agree that's a very powerful notion. And I just thank you for all the good work that you're doing as part of the Earth Institute there at Columbia University. Our next, and thank you for the time that you spent with us as well. Our next presentation is and Dr. Adriana Medina and Caitlin Holhauser. I'm going to share their video, unless you all want to bring it up. I think I have it all set up to go. And then,
go ahead, you drive.
Okay.
Welcome to our presentation, Exploring the SDGs Through Books, Finding Where You Fit to Make Change. I am Adriana Laza Medina, a professor in the Cato College of Education in the Department of Reading and Elementary
That's
Education.
the one, Eric. You just have to share your screen.
I'm Caitlin Holzhauser, a current doctoral student in UNC Charlotte's Curriculum and Instruction PhD program. The Sustainable Development Goals, known as the SDGs, were crafted to place responsibility on all countries to work together towards a better world for all. These 17 goals intersect with one another. From an educational standpoint, this makes the goals appropriate for teaching. From a personal standpoint, it makes them accessible by everyone in any profession. Our purpose in this presentation is to highlight how teaching the SDGs through books enables teachers to enrich their curriculum and encourage their students to work towards the goals and to enable people to discover local and global connections so as to improve the world. The 17 SDGs are broken down into several targets, which describe the varying facets of the goal, thus providing more actionable items.
The SDGs are all interconnected. Our ability to see these connections will determine how successful we are at solving some of the world's most pressing problems. As we begin this presentation, we want you to consider this question. Does clean water have anything to do with decent work and economic growth? Take a moment to formulate your answer and keep it in mind as we continue. Our ability to see the connections among the goals is important to our success in addressing them. For example, you might be able to readily see a connection among clean water and sanitation with life underwater, climate action, and good health and well-being. These connections might seem obvious, and media exposure allows us to readily see them.
In 2010, due to news of the BP oil spill, we saw more advertisements from companies like Dawn dish soap, which was commonly used in the rehabilitation of animals affected by the spill. The ongoing water crisis in Flint, Michigan is another example of how the SDGs become apparent through the media. More recently, we see reusable straws gaining popularity. This is likely due to the backing of some familiar companies who have supported and encouraged the Skip the Straw movement. Back to our question, is clean water and sanitation connected to decent work and economic growth? Let's take a look at a current example. Access to clean water is often seen as a problem relevant to developing countries. However, in the midst of COVID-19, we saw that clean water and sanitation became an issue for homeless populations in the US. We saw hand washing stations emerge all over major cities to lessen the extent that poverty has on good health and well-being. Certain populations had higher exposure to the virus, which resulted in higher disparities, which works against reducing inequalities. Exposure or diagnosis with the virus also influence individuals' ability to return to work, further stifling their own economic growth. As you can see, clean water and sanitation is related to decent work and economic growth.
Seeing the interconnections helps to address the problem. For example, people in the city may never venture to the beach. It would be easy to discount SDG 14 and deem it irrelevant to a city slicker's life. In Plastic Soup, Ebbing discusses the connection between businesses and their use of plastic packaging and the health of the oceans. You can't always be at the ocean to save the ocean. We must begin to think of innovative ways about other solutions. In another book, Fast Food Nation, Schlosser discusses the rise of the fast food industry, which occurred alongside the development of the interstate infrastructure and the affordability of the automobile industry. Here we see how a move in one direction towards a goal can result in a positive or negative reaction in another goal. In a more recent example, a company created a new form of packaging that can be ingested by deer. The deer were dying because they were ingesting plastic bags and wrappings people left behind. By working backward and starting with their own sector, industry and infrastructure, they were able to change and influence life on land. The interconnectedness of the SDGs is depicted differently in this image to further demonstrate the need to work together across disciplines to form multifaceted solutions.
What can you do in your own area of impact to help make progress towards the SDGs? To get started, it may be helpful to analyze your field. Be on the lookout for disproportionalities. Ask, does this problem affect a section of the population more than another, and why? Consider relationships between issues present within your field of study and map out their interconnections. Afterward, we encourage you to take action by volunteering, advocating, or innovating. What can you do in your own area of impact to make the progress towards the SDGs? We've been asking ourselves the same question over the last year. In our own profession, we're working to provide recommended trade books that teachers can use which highlight interconnections among the SDGs. We also are working to pair adult trade books with recommended children's books to give teachers other opportunities to grow their content knowledge.
From a teacher's perspective, you can come to the SDGs either through standards and objectives or through a good book. The teacher would have to read the book and determine the SDGs it aligns with. Then, based on the age, grade, curriculum, and plans, choose the best SDG of focus.
Here's an example of how a teacher and your students took action towards the SDGs. After reading A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park, one student suggested, let's do a bottled water drive and send them cases of bottled water. My question to the student was, is sending cases of bottled water sustainable? The project took a different route after posing this question and resulted in raising $1,000 to build a well in Kenya through the Water Project organization.
Teaching the SDGs through books gives the curriculum a global education focus and helps students understand how local issues connect with national and global issues and how small-scale movement can serve as the impetus for large-scale change. If local citizens do not view global issues as relevant to their own lives, then global issues will never be solved. We have provided a handout for you to download with suggested books to read that align with the SDGs. And we challenge you to find an SDG related to your future profession. Find a book to read so that you can learn more about the issue. And through reading and learning, determine what you can do to make progress towards the SDGs. And we hope that you will email us with your ideas.
Well, thank you, Dr. Medina and Caitlin, for sharing now, I want to just let everyone know that they have I think it's on page 8 or 7 or 8 on the PDF. There is the list of books that they have suggested in relation to their presentation. So please check that out. And I thank you so much for sharing your work as part of this TedXCraverRoad event. Our next presenter is Mahita. I'm going to mix up your last name. Sorry, Sadula, I believe.
Yes.
And she will be sharing her TED Talk about the impact of food systems on climate change. And Mahita, you should be able to share your screen if needed.
Okay, thank you. Each year, global temperatures rise, the number and intensity of hurricanes increase, and wildfires become more common. How long before we lose clean water or oxygen? According to the United Nations and federal scientists, if changes are not made, there will be a dramatic increase in droughts, heat waves, and so much more. We can reduce these effects by improving our current global food system. But how does food contribute to climate change? My name is Mahita Sadula, and I will be focusing on Sustainable Development Goal number 13, climate action, which involves taking urgent action to tackle climate change and its impacts. Climate change has become one of the most widespread and menacing issues in the world. Global emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases have increased dramatically in recent years. I'm interested in SDG 13 because it addresses the need for urgent action to tackle the climate crisis. The impacts of climate change are seen in every country around the world. It has transformed not only the environment, but also the global economy and human health. To combat climate change and its negative impacts, the Paris Agreement was created in 2015. The Paris Agreement aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while keeping the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. Taking immediate action to reduce the effects of climate change will lead to sustaining jobs, stimulating economic growth, and restoring biodiversity. SDG 13 is about taking action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and implementing policies and strategies to tackle the effects of climate change. The production of food, the transportation of food, and the consumption of certain foods all contribute to the climate crisis. As stated in a journal article published by Global Environmental Change, agriculture and food production systems are responsible for more than 1/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions. For example, Deforestation involved with farming and ranching releases large amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere. Animals such as cows and sheep release methane, which is another major greenhouse gas. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, meat and dairy products make up 14.5% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, which is roughly the same amount of emissions released by the transport sector. Although food consumption is a small fraction of a person's carbon footprint, dietary changes can have a great impact on the planet. Becoming a vegetarian or going vegan is a matter of personal choice and beliefs. However, consuming less red meat and dairy and more plant-based foods can significantly reduce emissions. Several organizations have taken action to address the impact of food in relation to the climate crisis. For example, the National Resource Defense Council has developed initiatives to reduce food waste and promote sustainability. Specifically, the NRDC encourages top food companies to serve less red meat and more plant-based foods, and to create menus that are healthier for both the environment and people. Similarly, the World Resource Institute has established ways to reduce food waste by implementing methods such as climate-smart agriculture. Overall, what we eat matters. The best way to reduce food-related emissions is to reduce food waste, eat more plant-based foods and meat, and improve our current global food system. I strongly believe climate change is a major threat today, and that everyone deserves to have access to clean water, breathable clean air, and nutritious food. Therefore, human activities that contribute to climate change, such as burning of fossil fuels, drilling and fracking, and deforestation, should be greatly reduced. It is our responsibility as global citizens to leave a safer and sustainable Earth for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahita. Really nice job, and we appreciate your TED Talk presentation. Our next talk will be by Casey Cadrell on sustainable goal number 15, climate change and COVID-19. Has nature had enough? And Casey, you should now have co-hosting abilities, so if you'd like to share your screen, please do so.
Thank you, Dr. Becker. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see that? I'm not really sure how to tell. This is my first time using screen share.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I will go ahead and get started. Okay. So, under the influence of the COVID-19 pandemic, 2020 has been a difficult year for everyone. From worldwide illness and death to stay-at-home orders and even the economic strain of small businesses, humanity as a whole has seemingly come to a recent halt in its incredible and exponential advancement that has been growing for centuries. However, what if I were to tell you that the global virus we have all surely come to love was not just a result of a chanced outbreak, but held a greater purpose for the sustainable health of our planet? Could COVID-19 be nature's way of telling us to stop exploiting the environment? What if we, in our continuous push for knowledge for the sole betterment of humanity, were the actual cause of this devastating pandemic through our negative influence over both climate and habitat? Hello, my name is Casey Gatrell, and my TED Talk is about Sustainable Development Goal number 15, life on land, along with its significant relationship to the improvement of humanity's negative influence over terrestrial nature. As a junior biology major at UNC Charlotte, I have chosen to research this SDG out of my love for biology and from personal witness of the excessive deforestation found in my home region of Matthews, North Carolina. And through this presentation, my purpose is to show you how life on land acts as a guide, directing us with the environmentally sustainable objectives we need to achieve in order to protect Earth as well as the organisms that call it home. And specifically, we will explore how this SDG relates to the worldwide hazard of climate change, investigating the implications of this environmental threat, including COVID-19, as well as the efforts that have been made to combat it. So for starters, COVID-19 is what is known as a zoonotic disease, which is an illness that can be shared between humans and other animals. In a flourishing and biodiverse habitat filled with many different species of organisms, zoonotic diseases are given the chance to spread diversely throughout the ecosystem without directly targeting a specific group. However, as humans continue to intrude upon an already fragile nature, these zoonotic diseases come into contact with people and establish widespread illness such as the COVID-19 pandemic today. Furthermore, this exploitation of nature not only has implications on human health, but the planet's health as a whole. The environment provides the world with crucial natural resources necessary for survival, such as nutritious food, clean water, breathable air, energy, and so much more. And one important resource we seem to be thinking less and less about these days is none other than plants. Plants have a near insurmountable role in the sustainability of our planet, mainly through the regulation of Earth's climate. To list a few examples, plants are responsible for producing the atmosphere's oxygen through the intake of carbon dioxide, a harmful greenhouse gas. Additionally, plants are also able to regulate local temperatures as well as moisture through the process of transpiration, which is evaporation of water from the plant as a function of photosynthetic activity. And lastly, plants can regulate terrestrial structure as the roots span the soil and establish a flow of nutrients as well as reduce potential erosion. So as vegetated habitats are continuing to be cut down for industrial use, a process known as deforestation, local climates are becoming drastically irregulated with the decreasing presence of a positive foliage influence. Altogether, the conservation and protection of collective plant health is a major focus of SDG number 15, Life on Land, which aims to improve the interdependent relationship between humanity and nature in a manner that promotes environmental sustainability. To do so, this SDG has established a list of several related objectives, along with methods for the directed improvement of environmental health, most of which have an influence over climate. And as we speak, many different social groups and organizations are working in response to the need of an improved climate, as noted by the goals presented by Life on Land, including an organization known as the Nature Conservancy. As a non-governmental organization, or an NGO, the Nature Conservancy has spread worldwide with the primary purpose of improving sustainability through nature-friendly practices that influence points of interest, such as climate change. In this regard, the Nature Conservancy has followed the guide of SDG number 15, Life on Land, for the restoration of climate by employing methods that involve forest management, including planting trees and promoting the use of clean biological energy across varying social communities. And as a whole, this NGO is working to spread environmental awareness, which is an important point I would like to expand upon as I conclude this presentation. Through my research, I have found SDG number 15, Life on Land, to be an imperative ideal we must strive to achieve if we are to maintain the future of humanity as well as the world that supports it. By excessively exploiting natural resources, both biotic and abiotic, and degrading our planet's climate, we are not only harming each factor of the ecosystems that surround us, but also ourselves as we rely on these important factors for survival. And unfortunately, one of the main causes for this increasing destruction is a lack of public knowledge in regard to environmental sustainability. Many people do not understand or have never been exposed to the influence their individual actions can have over nature, and they cannot be the ones to blame, for humanity's collective failure. However, if we continuously act for the health of Earth and increase public awareness, we can not only save the planet that we love, but also ensure a future where we, as well as Earth's many other organisms, can thrive in a state of sustainable interdependence. Again, my name is Casey Gatrell, and thank you so much for listening to my TED Talk on SDG number 15, Life on Land.
Thank you, Casey. Really nice job, and we will go now to our next presenters, which are Alex Simmons and Evelyn Luke Oman, I believe. And Alex, you should have sharing capability now. So I'm going to stop mine and allow you to share your screen.
Yes, excellent. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my presentation. So it should be sharing now, and just need to. All right, does that look good?
Yep.
Okay, take it away, Evelyn.
Good morning, everyone. So this is an image of South Korea, a globalized country affected negatively by air pollution. There are many factors which have caused the severe contamination of this country, but the most damaging is the transportation sector. It is a major contributor to the black carbon emissions and was responsible for 19% of the total black carbon emissions globally in 2020. As a result, South Korea is currently the 22nd most polluted nation in the world.
So hello everyone, my name is Alex Simmons.
And I am Evelyn Gluckerman.
And today we want to look at Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education, which focuses primarily on school enrollment, proficiency standards, gender equality, access to nutrition, and access to resources and technology, Like many of the other Sustainable Development Goals, education is vital to improving our global community because it provides our national and global environment with critical thinkers and problem solvers. Likewise, education impacts almost every other goal in some way. Education is key to escaping poverty, providing access to health and safety, promoting equality, and what we'd like to focus on today, sustainability.
So there are plenty of reasons as to why we should be concerned about the poor air quality in South Korea, such as enhanced climate change and pneumonia, which is the main cause of early child death. As a team, we do intend to tie the harmful effects of pollution to transportation and education in South Korea, as well as explore how education and transportation initiatives can be used to combat this pollution. Although it does seem that the SDG of quality education has no relevance to climate change and transportation, they all tie together in an important manner. The main modes of transportation in Korea for students are the subway system and public busing. Most of these buses run on diesel, which is a main cause of the air pollution. Over 29% of direct emissions and secondary formation of this pollution is caused by these vehicles, resulting in around 14,000 tons of diesel pollution from transportation annually. Because diesel buses are one of the most popular modes of travel to school, this may account for the growing air pollution in the country. What results is a vicious cycle. Children need these modes of transportation to obtain an education, but it's these very modes of transportation that negatively affect their health, impeding their access to education.
So now we'd like to look at solutions. Oopsies. Sorry about that, everybody. Now we'd like to look at solutions, the two most prominent ones that we want to focus on being climate education and sustainable transportation practices. They're both global and individual climate education. Students in South Korea, as you can see on the left, have begun rallying and suing their government over carbon emission levels. Additionally, South Korea's government has begun to lead the charge on eco-friendly transportation methods, such as magnetic road linings to fuel buses, eco-mobility festivals, and the 2009 National Strategy for Green Growth, which promotes environmentally friendly vehicles and establishes a carbon-limited framework for national transportation. And now we'd like to go a little bit deeper into what the Eco-Mobility Festival is and how it accomplishes these goals. So I'll talk on it a little bit and then Evelyn will give a much bigger rundown. But essentially, the Eco-Mobility World Festival was established in Suwon City in 2013 by the ICLEI, or International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. And it is this month-long neighborhood takeover in which the participants and citizens of this city or area are able to experience an artistic and scientific look into car-free urban experiences.
So in order to break down a little bit more of the structure of the festival, in September 2013, Suwon City was immersed in the eco-mobile lifestyle, and the world's latest innovative and eco-friendly methods of transportation were showcased. Walking, wheeling, cycling, and passaging were prioritized in regards to reducing diesel and gasoline emissions. With these commitments, Suwon aimed to reduce these emissions by 40% from the 2005 baseline by 2030. Because of its success, the festival is now held every 2 years in different countries such as Taiwan and South Africa, and utilizes performance art and scientific exhibition to engage the general public and advertise environmentally friendly means of transportation.
So ultimately, studying quality education as a sustainable development goal has enabled us both to witness just how intricately education intertwines with all these other fields on both national and personal levels. While we may not live in South Korea personally, the environmental damage and recovery that the nation has faced can lay the groundwork for the United States to prevent and combat climate change ahead of time. It is our responsibility to use education as a weapon against environmental destruction and a tool for raising the next generation. Because for us and for them, there is no planet B. Thank you.
Thank you.
And apologies for the slide mix-up.
Thank you so much, Alex and Evelyn. A really nice job, and also highlighting that the efforts there in South Korea. Our next presenters will be Tanvi Patel and Sandra Whitcore. Let me just share my screen so we can make you all official. And then Tanvi, I have given you now co-hosting capabilities. I think both of you have that. So I'm going to stop sharing mine and you all can share whatever you have. Thank you.
Just 1 second. Hi, my name is Tanvi Patel.
My name is Sandra Wichter.
We welcome you to our presentation about the intersection between climate change and education. The 2020 climate strikes have shown that young people today are ready to fight for their futures. In this image here, we have a boy who was missing his science class where he could have been learning more about the intricacies of climate change, but instead he's trying to educate policymakers about this issue.
This talk is oriented around Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education. Education is a weapon against ignorance, poverty, and instability, while simultaneously being a catalyst for positive change. Education is what allows people to gain valuable skills to break out of unfavorable situations and work towards a higher quality of life. Education is also what drives the movement towards mitigating climate change. Without understanding how climate change occurs, or understanding that it does indeed occur, no efforts will be made to combat it. Curriculum on a worldwide scale needs to implement lessons about climate change because the movement starts from educating young people. As such, implementing such curriculum in schools is the starting point, though this information must be dispensed to the older generation as well. The more people that support legislation intended to mitigate or reverse the effects of climate change, the higher the likelihood that such legislation would pass. While developed nations have a great opportunity to implement curricula about climate change, disadvantaged countries may struggle to provide adequate schooling. Even in first world countries, many students in impoverished areas do not have equal access to education to their peers. If the school system is underfunded, students may not have access to information about climate change. As climate change is a global issue, citizens internationally must become educated on the matter. Therefore, the mitigation and reversal of climate change is dependent on the success of providing an equal and high-quality education to the world. Simply put, combating climate change will not be successful without making strides to improve education. Challenges posed by climate change directly affect enrollment, education performance, and attendance. On the flip side, education affects climate change by empowering a new generation to make progress on an issue that will be affecting us the most.
And so bringing quality education to every child is important because it provides the pathways to make significant change in the world. And any country's healthcare system, economy, technology, and infrastructure are all dependent on education. The same applies to climate change. By empowering children through learning, they're able to become lifelong learners and contribute meaningfully to society. And climate change disproportionately affects developing countries. While developed nations bear more of the responsibility for climate change, developing countries are more vulnerable to its effects. This is because developing countries have generally warmer climates, are more climate sensitive as a result of being more reliant on agriculture. Meanwhile, severe weather, rainfall variability, and salination exacerbate existing political tensions and competition for resources. It's these kinds of disparities that negatively impact the quality of education. The UN reported that women born during flood years in India in the 1970s were 19% less likely to have attended primary school. And just recently, floods in Assam, India, and Bangladesh have left thousands displaced, and remaining schools in Bangladesh have been turned into shelters. It's going to take years for such communities to fully recover, and affecting the quality of education and resources available for future generations of children born into these regions. When schools don't have qualified teachers or enough materials for all students, this problem magnifies into a loss of human potential, which has broader impacts on an entire country's infrastructure, economy, and the response to climate change. Just as climate change affects the quality of education, education has the power to turn our reality around. And by investing in the generation that will be most affected by climate change, they'll be better equipped with the knowledge to bring about change since they will be the next generation of policymakers, scientists, and activists. And climate-proofing schools is equally as important so that schools are able to recover quickly from natural disasters. This involves being strategic in the building materials used to withstand unpredictable weather, improving design such as incorporating water catching methods, and also sanitation facilities. Even though these are challenging issues to address, it's important to remember that well-educated global citizens will be able to make informed decisions about our climate in the long run.
NGOs are a powerful tool utilized to combat the effects of climate change. Most NGOs address education about the subject, as climate literacy is the most efficient way to produce change. Earth Day Network, for example, has a section on their website labeled Climate and Environmental Literacy. They have issued the following statement about their commitment to education. Through the Climate and Environmental Literacy campaign, we will ensure that students across the world benefit from high-quality education to develop into informed and engaged environmental stewards. Another NGO is called NatureServe. NatureServe provides education specifically regarding conservation, as it has a tremendous database of resources on its website that can be used to educate students about a variety of efforts regarding climate change. We are all global citizens, and we must shoulder the responsibilities that arise with such a title. Neglecting our duty as global citizens means encouraging apathy, and there is no greater adversary to change than this. It isn't a requirement for everyone to be taking dramatic action and devoting their lives to fighting climate change, but everyone is held accountable to educating themselves about not only the environment, but about the rest of the world. True peace and cooperation comes from mutual understanding. To truly enact the change needed to save the world from the brink of irreversible damage, cooperation and education must be encouraged at every avenue. To combat the lack of accessibility of education in some regions, we are at least responsible for educating ourselves and those around us. If everyone contributes an iota of change, the results will be astronomical. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tanvi and Sandra. Really nicely done, and we appreciate your sharing all the different NGOs that are connected to your research. Our next speaker is David Benton. I'm going to share my screen for just a second. He is going to be presenting on reducing waste with circular economies, and I will hand it over now to David.
Thank you, Dr. Biker. Based on current population trends and projections, we will have around 9.7 billion people on Earth in 2050. That is a staggering number in itself. However, if we maintain our current resource consumption habits, we could require up to 3 planets of resources to support that population. This is clearly not a sustainable path forward. It is past time that we correct our course and change our global material use habits. If we do not choose to change how we live our lives today, in the next few decades, that choice will be made for us. My name is David Benton, and I'm a computer science student in the honors program here at UNC Charlotte. This semester, we've been investigating the Sustainable Development Goals set out by the UN, and I've been focusing on the 12th, which deals with the responsible consumption and production of resources. An ancient idea may be able to address and combat this crisis: circular economies. The actual concept of circular economies is fairly simple. Currently, we live in linear economies, where items are designed to be created, used, and then disposed of. It doesn't take much analysis to determine that this model could not possibly be sustainable. Circular economies have 3 primary goals. First, design out waste and pollution. Second, keep products and materials in use. And third, support and rejuvenate natural systems. You may be wondering why this has not been done before. Well, it turns out there are a couple of major hurdles that needed to be overcome before the system would truly work. But these hurdles have now been mostly cleared. The first hurdle was that of energy production. If you do not have a source of renewable energy that is not harmful to the environment, it is difficult to design out waste and pollution. Thankfully, due to continuing innovations in solar, wind, and similar energy sources, we have been able to design much of that waste out of our energy production. The second large hurdle is how to handle the current life cycle of goods. It's really 2 cycles if you think about it: a biological cycle for anything organic and a technological cycle for non-organic materials. In a circular economy, the biological cycle is the only one where there's any consumption. As food is passed to consumers, it is transformed into energy and then biological waste that is returned to the environment to create more food down the line. In the technological cycle, however, there are no consumers, only users. A user purchases an item and uses it, but then when they are done, the product is resold, repaired, used in further manufacturing processes, or as a last resort recycled. When this is done properly, it nearly eliminates waste in the way consumers use products. With these two major hurdles cleared, what's stopping us? The actual process of eliminating these inefficiencies is fiendishly difficult. It is nearly impossible to convince people to completely change their way of life, especially when that change is asking them to think outside the scope of their own lives. However, we are currently going through a time where we are already being asked to do this very thing. It's the perfect time to create lasting and meaningful change in our world. On October 1st, Europe announced to the world that they are ready to support this radical change with the European Circular Cities Declaration. This declaration, created in collaboration with a number of international organizations, is a framework for cities to commit to transforming their municipal economies into ones that are nearly waste-free. The Center on Sustainable Consumption and Production and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation are both NGOs who are working to eliminate waste in the ways we use materials in line with the goals outlined in the 12th Sustainable Development Goal. They have been instrumental in helping to define this framework. There are currently 31 signatory cities across Europe as of the time of writing this, but that will hopefully increase drastically. This is a promising starting point, but for it to make a dent in the 3 planets of resources we're expected to need in only 30 years, circular economies need to be the norm. It must be a global effort. It will take time, energy, and capital to convert our consumer societies into sustainable ones and to meet the goals of SDG 12 and the others. But this cost now is much smaller than the potential cost of inaction. Thank you.
Wow, well said, David, and nice job. The first time I heard about circular economies was actually reading through David's rough draft. So I want to appreciate you sharing that knowledge with us, and also the reality of how the resources we're using are equal to 3 different economies, or 3 different planets. That is quite stunning. So thank you. I want to share now a talk from Bianca Avram, who could not be here with us, but she recorded hers. So I'm sharing my screen, and then her talk is called Climate Change as a Driving Force Behind Global Hunger.
How do we create a society without hunger? This is a very complex challenge and one that is not impossible to achieve. Hello, my name is Bianca Abram, and today I will be briefly introducing Social Development Goal number 2, also known as Zero Hunger, which is a goal developed by the United Nations, which strives to completely eradicate hunger worldwide, ensure food security to all, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So in today's talk, I will be discussing the implications of climate change on global hunger issues, as well as solutions that have been reached through the partnership of some non-governmental organizations. So to start, hunger is one of the few CDGs that can be considered a multifaceted issue that arises from cumulative effects such as human conflict, climate change, and local and global economic depression. Statistically speaking, the prevalence of hunger has seen a progressive decline over the decades. However, the amount of people who suffer from undernourishment has increased alarmingly since 2015. Approximately 690 million people, or 8.9% of the global population, has suffered from hunger. And more disturbing is the fact that approximately 2 billion people lack access to a safe and sufficient food source, and 144 million children under the age of 5 were severely impacted by growth stunting in 2019. So if these trends continue, the number of people that suffer from hunger will far exceed 840 million by the year 2030. Climate change is one of the leading global causes of hunger, which results in food shortages on account of agricultural industries not being able to keep up with the constant demand for food. And we have reached a point where climate change can no longer be considered a myth. This is a global crisis that no longer can be ignored. Among the many implications of climate change as it relates to hunger is the fact that more frequent extreme weather conditions, such as floods, droughts, hurricanes, increase food insecurity and malnutrition by destroying land, livestock, crops, and essential food supplies needed for a productive agricultural sector. So in other words, in order to end global hunger, slowing down climate change is the first step in this complex process. We are far from being on track in meeting CDG goal number 2's agenda, which means that we must join forces in following the footsteps of some organizations that are hard at work to reverse these disheartening trends. One of these organizations is One Acre Fund, which strives to eradicate poverty and hunger by supporting small farmers in developing countries through funds and resources. Stop Hunger Now is widely known for packing and shipping meals for people around the world, as well as educating people on nutrition and spreading awareness of global hunger. And lastly, Kickstart has powered water pumps for irrigation in the sub-Saharan Africa for years in order to promote a sustainable agriculture output in these areas. Lastly, World Food Program USA has dedicated itself to helping most at-risk countries prepare for and recover from extreme weather conditions, while also ensuring that a significant amount of food sources will remain undamaged as to feed the needing population. So while it is with great hope that these organizations will be able to distribute equitable access to food worldwide, completely eradicating hunger and meeting all of Sustainable Goal number 2's agenda is not a realistic expectation for 2030, judging by the current trends. However, what we can do in the upcoming 30 years is greatly reduce the effect of climate change on global hunger. This can only be done if we begin taking action and restoring our planet to its full potential. Only if we all join forces together will ending global hunger become an achievable resolution. So to be completely honest, before undergoing this extensive research on CDG number 2, I too was oblivious of the severity of this global crisis. So while I had a generalized view of food shortages in the sub-Saharan Africa and other countries due to armed conflict, I was taken aback by the fact that a large proportion of the United States population is experiencing a similar lack of access to nutritious food. In fact, nearly 35 million Americans suffer from hunger today. And conducting this research has also opened my eyes to the interdependence of all nations and mitigating the shortcomings of one individual nation, because the suffering in one country can very much be felt economically in another. So with that being said, I hope that my talk has also brought awareness to those participating in this TEDx event, and I genuinely hope that you will all take it upon yourselves to help stop this global hunger crisis. This generation is the future of mankind, so we must make the most of it so that the following generation can lead a better life. Thank you so much for your time.
Well said by Bianca.
How do we create?
So our next talk is also recorded by Ty Burling, and he's looking at the economies and its effect on climate change.
We all know the effects that COVID-19 has had on the world, but one of the worst has been the worldwide economy. The world is currently facing the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. And GDP per capita is expected to decline by a whole 4.2% by the end of this year. Hello everyone, my name is Ty Burling, and I'm going to be talking about the worldwide economy and its effects on climate change. The purpose of this presentation is to highlight the importance of inclusive and sustainable economic growth, which is SDG number 8, decent work and economic growth. It's important to talk about SDG number 8 because economic growth and work opportunities for people, especially in developing countries, result in so many additional benefits. Economic growth is crucial to the success and prosperity of any country. It happens in steps. It starts with the education and proper training. If people are educated and trained well enough to complete a job, their business will do better, and as a result of that, make more money. Once the company is able to make that extra money, they will put it into their employees through salary or extra benefits, which will motivate them to work harder, keep their drive, and all that. And then with that higher salary, the living standards also increase. There'll be more money flowing through the economy because of that. In 2019, 22% of the world's youth were not engaged in either education, employment, or training. And you may be wondering, how does economic growth connect to climate change? So SDG number 8 connects to climate change through the production of oil as a specific example. To dig deeper into it, Nigeria is the #1 producer of oil in Africa, which in turn makes them one of the top countries, not just in Africa, but worldwide, in emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. They make most of their money through the production of oil. That is where their economy is really built from the ground up through the production of oil. So they are producing more and more as years go on, and especially now that the COVID-19 implications have driven their economy down, they're going to have to produce more of it to get back to where they were at. So all the land in the world that is being used for oil production is projected to produce as much as 5.9 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases, which is a huge factor in climate change. The UNDP is one of the many organizations that is trying to help with climate change relating to economic growth. So the UNDP is the United Nations Development Program, and the way they are addressing climate change is by focusing on the land sector, where 1/4 of the world's gas emissions happen. With the help of the UNDP, land will be preserved, and as a result of that, there will be less greenhouse gases emitted from oil production and all the other things that happen straight from the ground. It's important to take action in helping economic growth globally in really any way you can. However, keep in mind, as I mentioned, the effects that come with the production of oil, which is most of the developing countries go to when it comes to making money. It is getting a little bit different in these countries as technology grows, and these natural gas, different things like that are really helping them not rely so much on the production of materials that do go into the air and do have a part in climate change. But we are extremely lucky to be in a country where economic growth took place centuries ago, and we're able to reap the benefits today. We are where we are because of the generosity of people from our past, so why not be a part of helping the future? So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all stay healthy.
All right, thank you to Ty.
We all know the effects that COVID-19 has had on the world.
And our next talk is also recorded by Garrett DeMars, and he is presenting on SDG 9 and climate change. Here we go.
How does the way SDG 9, industries, innovation, and infrastructure, practiced in different countries, impact climate change globally? Hello, my name is Garrett DeMars, and in this presentation, I will be discussing the significance of industries, innovation, and infrastructure, and its impact on climate change. Climate change is hands down one of the biggest threats to our society today. There are several initiatives being taken place, but much work needs to be done if we as a country and we as a society would like to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030. The purpose of this talk is to provide you with an understanding of the different Sustainable Development Goals and initiatives taking place in industries across the globe to combat climate change. Industries, innovation, and infrastructure is about introducing and promoting new technologies, facilitating
apologies here.
Is one of the most dangerous aspects to climate change that poses a monumental threat to our society. Mom's Clean Air Force is a non-government, non-profit organization composed of millions of parents dedicated to fighting against climate change and air pollution in an attempt to protect their children's health. One specific area of focus that Mom's Clean Air Force is dedicated to stopping is particulate pollution. Particulate pollution is distribution of airborne solids and liquids into the air that results from the combustion of fossil fuels and other sources of energy production that are harmful to the environment. If left untreated, particulate pollution can have serious or even deadly effects. Another example of a non-government organization fighting against climate change is Climate Reality. Climate Reality is a diverse group of individuals working together to step-by-step solve the greatest issue facing society today. They are composed of activists, cultural leaders, organizers, scientists, and storytellers committed to building a sustainable future together. Currently, their mission is to catalyze a global solution to the climate crisis by making urgent action a necessity across every sector of society. The current results of this initiative are over 31,000 climate reality leaders mobilizing communities in 170 countries, in addition to branches in 10 critical nations and regions around the earth, and 130 activist chapters and growing, pushing for practical clean energy policies across the US. In conclusion, to combat climate change in relation to industries, innovation, and infrastructure, it is important to consider the global impact of manufacturing and the energy consumption required to produce goods. Developing alternative, environmentally friendly forms of energy will help to combat climate change by reducing air pollution and energy consumption. Reflecting on the impacts manufacturing has on climate change has opened my eyes to how goals like industries, innovation, and infrastructure work in an effort to combat, reduce, and eliminate the global threat. I hope this presentation has helped you to open your eyes to the reality and the threat climate change poses on our environment if left untreated, and how using alternative solutions to industries and manufacturing can help build the framework to create a cleaner environment.
All right. Thank you. We are moving now to our live presentation again. I'd like to have Dorian Benjamin and Meredith Roden speak now about present their TED Talk on deserted, reducing inequalities and addressing food deserts in the United States. You all have co-hosting capabilities if you need it, but I'll stop sharing my screen and you all can go ahead now.
Thank you, Dr. Becker. When thinking of reducing climate change and addressing inequalities, we often think of these as two separate entities. But what if they're alike in more ways than we think? When we address food deserts, we address climate change. A food desert is an area in which most of the community lacks access to a grocery store or supermarket. People in these areas are often forced to resort to convenience stores or gas stations to grocery shop, both of which do not cater to healthy eating. Some even travel miles on end just to reach the nearest supermarket.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to our TEDx presentation, Deserted, Reducing Inequalities and Addressing Food Deserts in the U.S. Our names are Dorian Benjamin and Meredith Roden, and we are focused on how food deserts relate to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 10, Reducing Inequalities. Reducing inequalities is an extremely relevant topic in today's world, as we have seen over the summer with the Black Lives Matter movement and this entire year globally as everyone works to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Food deserts also play a role in inequalities throughout our country and in the world in general. Working to address the issue of food deserts could lead to a reduction of inequality when it comes to food accessibility and food insecurity, as ensuring that everyone has equal access to healthy, nutritious foods is imperative for the overall health and well-being of the world's citizens.
And as Dorian just said, Sustainable Development Goal 10 addresses reducing inequalities. Around 19 million Americans live in a food desert. Lacking access to nearby grocery stores and healthy foods, those living in these areas are suffering at the hands of inequality. You see, food deserts didn't just happen by accident. Research shows that those most affected by this crisis are minority communities. Yet, just down the street in the suburbs, it seems like there's a grocery store everywhere you turn your head. Grocers tend not to invest money in these areas most affected by this crisis. But this is at the detriment of thousands of people. This creates a cycle that perpetuates food inequality in minority communities, a cycle that does not favor reducing climate change, but amplifies it.
Per the United Nations, the why behind SDG 10 is as follows: inequalities based on income, sex, age, disability, sexual orientation, race, class, ethnicity, religion, and opportunity continue to persist across the world. Inequality threatens long-term social and economic development, harms poverty reduction, and destroys people's sense of self-fulfillment and self-worth. This in turn can breed crime, disease, and environmental degradation. These inequalities can be found in areas where food deserts are prominent, as these are typically lower income areas where minorities live. Those lacking access to grocery stores may have to travel long distances to reach a supermarket. This increases air pollution, as cars release carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, which contribute to 1/5 of the United States' total global warming pollution. Food that is locally sourced and grown is much better for the environment. In food deserts, fast food is everywhere. The transportation of food products to restaurants is often a journey that leaves behind a large carbon footprint. Access to locally sourced foods is not only a better environmental option, but a better health option. Residents in food deserts are not afforded the right to a vast and nutritious health food selection. Instead, many resort to fast food or other unhealthy foods. Everyone deserves access to healthy foods. There should be no societal hierarchy that deserves better food options than the other.
Food First is a nonprofit organization working to end food injustice. Food deserts are food injustice. They envision a world in which all people have access to healthy, ecologically produced, and culturally appropriate food. At the heart of their work is implementing policies that break systemic catalysts which allow food injustice to thrive. As we live our lives, wake up for school, go to work, grocery shop, we are immersed in our subjective routines, often losing sight of the bigger picture, our bigger globe. We must not forget that besides just ourselves, we are a greater planet, a greater people, a connection we all hold. The essence of being human means that we must protect each other from inequalities, one of them being food deserts in America.
As someone who is working towards pursuing a career in higher education, I am constantly working to educate myself and learn more on various topics surrounding inequality. Learning more about what food deserts are and how efforts can be made to address them is important to me, especially since many college students live in areas where these are prominent. Today, it is our hope that you will take what you have learned about food deserts in the United States and begin to address them in your own communities. Can you identify a food desert? Do you live in one? Do you know someone else that does? These are the questions that will begin to remedy the crisis of food deserts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorian and Meredith. Please check the comments also in the chat because you got a lot of great feedback as well as all the other presenters. I want to now share my screen to our next talk, which is also actually this one is a recorded one by LeVar Fredericks and Tanmay Kanjali. And they'll be speaking on energy and our climate.
My name is Tanmay Kanjali.
My name is LeVar Fredericks, and we have a question. So what is energy? Well, if you ask us, we believe that energy is what fuels global advancements by first manifesting itself within us all. Every morning, we must locate the energy that we need to be productive throughout our day, and as time has passed by and we've continued to utilize a good night's sleep to replenish ourselves, this replenished energy has led to motivated individuals changing the world. So currently, on the topic of sparking change, the United Nations has created a list of 17 Sustainable Development Goals that target healthy global advancements, one of which we would like to introduce. Today, we will discuss SDG number 7 and share how this goal is connected to addressing solutions to the global threat of climate change and highlight examples of NGOs that are working toward doing just that in relation to this goal. SDG number 7 is fueling global change with its focus on affordable and clean energy aimed at ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Countries need affordable and reliable sources of energy because this helps power their economies and supports advancements in healthcare, education, agriculture, and more. The energy needs to be from sustainable sources that do not harm people's health and the environment so that future generations can live in a clean world. SDG number 7 is especially important in today's world with the COVID-19 pandemic as well. One of the targets of SDG number 7 is to increase the proportion of renewable energy in global energy production. In 2016, the proportion of renewable energy globally reached 17%. In that year, the proportion increased at the fastest rate since 2012. However, this needs to be improved further. The COVID-19 pandemic provides a great opportunity to achieve this goal since countries are currently investing in their economies to help with recovery. Clean energy can get a huge boost if countries choose to invest in it during this time period.
So how does switching to clean and renewable energy address climate change? Well, the way we obtain our energy has a major impact on the climate. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have relied primarily on fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas, which when extracted and burned for energy, produce carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases which contribute directly to climate change. On the other hand, renewable energy has a significantly lower carbon footprint than fossil fuels. Many countries have been taking action against climate change by investing in clean energy technologies such as wind and solar, creating energy plans that aim to convert to majority or entirely renewable energy sources by certain years, and increasing energy efficiency standards for buildings and vehicles. The key to the renewable energy transition is good central leadership. The United States does not have a strong cohesive policy regarding climate change. Without central leadership, it is up to the states to enact their own energy policies, and therefore progress varies on the state. Climate change is a global issue and therefore must be dealt with in that way. We leave individual states or even individual countries to fight for themselves, true meaningful progress will never occur. And while central leadership and making all new energy investments in renewables is a good start, there must also be a long-term vision for eliminating fossil fuels as well, since these are the main contributors to climate change. For example, India has made impressive investments and commitments to renewable energy in the past decade. They aim to increase the share of renewable energy to 40% of the national energy output by 2030. However, their current focus is to supplement their existing energy production with renewable energy to meet their growing energy demands and increase the number of jobs, not reduce fossil fuel consumption. While this is a step in the right direction, countries must also make a plan to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels to truly address climate change.
Here in the United States, we have an NGO that goes by the name of Rocky Mountain Institute, or RMI, that is dedicated to global sustainability. While being focused on sustainability, RMI particularly focuses on addressing the global threat of climate change through energy, which in turn targets SDG number 7 in the process. As a result, RMI now leads initiatives aimed at producing policies, models, and partnerships, all relating to the efforts to promote clean energy and help better the climate. Subsequently, RMI is helping to accelerate the transition from fossil fuels to a clean energy economy. But how are they doing this now, you may be wondering. Well, currently, RMI is dedicating efforts overseas in the Chinese city of Shenzhen. Shenzhen is a world leader in the adoption of electrical vehicles and has its sights set on all or fully adoption of electrical vehicles within the next few years. So RMI is evaluating policies and market dynamics that are making this possible in Shenzhen in hopes for, it to be able to spread the success that it has been having globally.
In conclusion, energy powers the world as well as each and every one of us. Even though we need energy for our well-being, our consumption of energy can harm the world we live in. We need to be mindful of our usage of energy and the ways we obtain it. A lot of responsibility rests on our shoulders. How will you exercise your responsibility?
Thank you. Thank you so much, LeVar and Tenmei. I think LeVar might be on here. So I want to just thank you all for your talk, and also nicely done with the design of your presentation. Now we have Claire Patrick, who also put together a video for her presentation. She will be speaking about cities, inclusive food systems, and climate change.
Let me ask you, what does it mean to be inclusive? How should we define inclusivity? What does an inclusive city look like? And finally, what does this word mean for climate change and food systems? I'll let you ruminate on that. My name is Claire Patrick, and I am a student here studying the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with an emphasis on Goal 11, which is entitled Sustainable Cities and Communities. The goal is working to make urban landscapes inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. While this looks different in many cities and nations around the world, there are a few non-governmental organizations that are also working towards our futures. These directions and challenges are absolutely paramount to our survival as a global society, since over half of the world's population now live in cities. Urban areas consume around 70% of the global food supply and are among some of the most vulnerable locations for the negative effects of climate change. There are actually two indicators within Goal 11 which are linked to addressing food systems and climate change. Indicator 6 hopes to improve air quality and waste management. Improperly recycled or composted food decomposes and releases methane, an extremely potent greenhouse gas which worsens air quality and further drives climate change. There is a great deal of energy and resources that go into food that never gets consumed. Then we have Indicator 7, which seeks to create inclusive green spaces. As unplanned urban sprawl continues to afflict cities, establishing clean and green spaces can also improve air quality and encourage healthy habits for city residents. But what does Goal 11 actually look like in a city? Maybe it looks like connecting rural farms to food insecure urban areas to expand sustainable food systems. Or maybe it looks like community spaces and urban agriculture practices such as rooftop and community gardens. Interestingly, sometimes urban agriculture does not create the desired outcome in all cities. While it can create a plethora of opportunities in some cities, the presence of a community garden in higher income cities can raise rent and property values nearby, which pushes out the residents impacted by low income, usually the very community that urban agriculture was designed to benefit from. A large part of Goal 11 is inclusivity and crafting a sustainable future that everyone is a part of. There's actually an NGO working specifically towards this. Local Governments for Sustainability is an international network, and it is focused on driving sustainable policy at a variety of levels. Their city food network helps establish local and regional knowledge exchanges about creating sustainable urban food systems and urban food policies in order to foster low carbon emission development in cities around the world. This network creates and shares guidelines and information in order to increase awareness about the necessities of planning sustainable food systems. Most recently, in collaboration with the Global Partnership on Sustainable Urban Agriculture and Food Systems, they hosted African City Food Month in July of this year. This virtual platform was an opportunity for leaders and experts across many cities in Africa to come together and share strategies, make connections, and cultivate discussion on how to build more resilient and inclusive food systems, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed many vulnerabilities in our urban structures and food systems. In the past few months, we have had to look for brand new ways to connect and include. As we go forth, it is critical for our future to continue looking for solutions that will reduce the impacts of climate change while creating urban environments in which we can all have the opportunities to flourish. Climate change is now a very human problem that requires us to look deeply at the humanity that made this so. Despite the steps taken by NGOs so far, we must continue to search for inclusive and sustainable solutions to mitigate the effects of climate change. We also need to critically examine our own roles as global citizens. Shouldn't that involve a greater responsibility, not only to our planet, but also to each other? Thanks for listening.
All right. So that was Claire Patricks. And next we have a live presentation by Carissa Ewing, and she is going to be sharing about don't drink the coffee, considering climate change as a component of SDG 3. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I believe Carissa is here with us. And Carissa, just unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Biker. Good afternoon. My name is Carissa Ewing, and I am a seniors honor student at UNC Charlotte, majoring in biology with minors in chemistry and math. I'm also an honors student in the Honors 3700 Critical Global Citizenship and the Sustainable Development Goals class. In recent years, I found myself thinking about how my small everyday life decisions impact my life in the grander scheme. For example, it's mid-afternoon right now, and I'm hitting that midday slump, and I have two options. One, I could pour another cup of coffee in my shark mug, or two, I could eat a tangerine that gives natural energy without the effects of caffeine. I'm at a crossroads, obviously, but this crossroads might seem silly or simple to you, but it's pretty serious to me. You see, there's information in the scenario that you're missing simply because I haven't included it, and you probably haven't thought to consider it. That information is that I have a pre-existing heart condition. Now the choice seems more clear. I should probably choose the tangerine because caffeine could have adverse effects due to my heart condition. Now, what does a seemingly silly scenario have to do with anything? The answer is simple: everything. You see, this crossroads decision in my life is analogous to crossroads decisions that impact everyone's lives, just as decisions relating to climate change. Recently, I've been researching and studying Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health and well-being, specifically in the countries the United States and Australia. I'm a pre-med senior, as I said, studying biology with minors in math and chem, but beyond that, I'm a survivor and a fighter of many health conditions that drive my passion and my courage and my compassion for the medical field. Naturally, SDG 3 fits my interest as it focuses on health. Specifically, the 13 target goals of SDG 3 focus on sexual health, ending childhood and maternal mortality, ending communicable diseases by targeting prevalent epidemics, providing resources for non-communicable diseases, reducing exposure to hazardous substances, and providing safe and affordable health care that includes access to treatment, medications, and vaccinations. While studying SDG 3 in Australia and the United States, I came across a theme. The theme was that SDG 3 is practically unachievable without the success of the other SDGs, specifically goals 2 and 6 that relate to zero hunger and water and sanitation, respectively. Food and water, being a vital component of climate change, are also directly linked to the success of achieving good health and well-being for all. You see, without clean water, we can't stop the spread of pathogens such as norovirus, E. coli, and even hepatitis A. If a country makes the decision not to advocate for better water and food resources, they are inherently making the decision to ignore the well-being of their citizens. Beyond that, SDG 3 is also related to SDGs 15, Life on Land. This SDG works to protect natural resources. In my research, I discovered that Australia has taken great strides towards their accomplishment of SDG 3, good health and well-being. In these strides, the Australian government has recognized and responded to the interconnectedness of the SDGs. In particular, Australia adopted the slogan, "Healthy Parks, Healthy People," in an attempt to shed light on the need for a clean and safe environment while recognizing how the quality of the environment affects the health of the people. It goes right back to that crossroads. You could pick another cup of coffee or a tangerine. It may seem like a seemingly harmless decision at first glance, but upon further investigation, it's obvious that the decision is both vital and care and consideration need to go into it. Government and non-government organizations need to be weighing the cost of their decisions relative to other areas of life. How will you choose to move forward? With careful consideration of ill effects or not addressing climate change, or with a narrow-minded approach on the effects of climate change? The tangerine or the coffee? Don't drink the coffee.
Thank you, Chris. I love the coffee mug, by the way, the shark one.
Thank you. Let's bite back.
Bite back. There you go. As often coffee does in late afternoon. Thank you, and very powerful use of imagery too, to help us remember your TED Talk. All right, we're coming to sort of the end of our program here. We have a couple more. We're going to transition now to thinking about, we've had a chance to hear all of our honors students, so thank you for your very engaging presentations. And now we're going to wrap up by thinking about ways to take action. So I'm going to share this video first from Dr. Elizabeth Crawford, who is a professor at UNC Wilmington. And then we will hear from Miss Natalia Mia, who is also our technical director for today. And I'll have some closing comments as well.
My name is Elizabeth Crawford, and I'm a teacher educator at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, where I specialize in global education and curriculum design. My research interests include examining transformative pedagogies to address complex, interconnected issues that are reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals. In this short video, I will highlight the power of story to teach about global issues in the classroom, as well as to inspire change. The SDGs provide a blueprint for achieving a just, sustainable, and peaceful planet. All people everywhere are called to end poverty, fight inequality, and stop climate change. The SDGs also provide a useful framework for building teachers' global competencies, the knowledge, skills, and motivation needed to address complex, interconnected issues in their communities and world. By their very nature, the SDGs are heavily interdependent, reflecting connections between the three key dimensions: economic, social, and environmental. For example, mass consumerism drives natural resource depletion and environmental degradation locally and globally, a key catalyst for climate change. Environmental issues are also correlated with racial, social, and economic injustice and affect an individual's ability to thrive. To achieve a sustainable future, one must integrate the 5 pillars of sustainability for people, prosperity, and the planet, promoted through peace and partnership. As a teacher educator, I aim to help future teachers make these connections in their curriculum. SDG 4, quality education, is considered the most vital input for every dimension of sustainable development. Target 4.7 in particular calls to ensure by 2030, all learners will acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. In my courses, students design curricula on a variety of related global challenges for elementary learners, such as animal endangerment, marine pollution, and food insecurity, bringing these issues into local classrooms. Educators play a tremendous role in nurturing students' global competency, or the capacity and disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance. Climate change in particular is complex, ever evolving, and requires an urgent shift in our behaviors and our relationship to the planet. But how can we effectively teach others so they will act? Storytelling is a powerful pedagogical tool that can draw students in by engaging their fundamental humanity, sparking curiosity about what it means to participate in the world. Stories are central to the human experience, transcending boundaries, time, place, and cultures. They activate our emotions and attention, and they can drive us to action. While storytelling is typically associated with the written or spoken word, they can also be conveyed in diverse modalities, such as in cartoons, street art, dance, film, and photography. Even data can tell a story. As an example, Global Oneness Project is a California-based nonprofit and multimedia education platform housing award-winning films and photo essays, hiding social, cultural, and environmental issues, with companion curricula for elementary to university classrooms. For example, their film, Ile de Jean Charles, one meets two residents on a tiny island vanishing in the rising waters of the Louisiana Bayou. In their photo essay, Melting Away, Camille Seaman documents the polar regions of our planet, their environments, life forms, history of human exploration, and the communities that work and live there. While the medium is, whether it's film or photography, stories can foster understanding, evoke empathy and perspective taking, and drive us to act. A recent global education monitoring report stated that education can help us shift to a more sustainable way of living. Including stories of change makers in teaching and learning can inspire personal behavior changes. In fact, neuroscience research suggests that inspiring stories have the ability to change the chemistry in our brains, such as the release of oxytocin, making us feel more connected with others. Stories can also change the narratives that we tell ourselves, making us want to live better lives. For example, my learning about Lauren Singer and her TEDx talk, Why I Live a Zero Waste Life, drove me to reduce my consumer behaviors. In order to reduce single-use packaging, Lauren opened the package-free shop in Brooklyn, New York. This visual of her holding all the waste that she has produced in 6 years both shocked and inspired me to live better. As Chip and Dan Heath describe it, stories drive action through simulation, what to do, as well as inspiration, the motivation to do it. I've since switched to bar shampoo, use reusable produce bags, and buy in bulk to reduce my single-use waste. This example illustrates the power of story in achieving the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you for inviting me to share my work and to celebrate your commitment to advancing the SDGs. I will close with a short story about Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg. At age 15, she became deeply concerned about climate change. She decided to raise awareness by protesting in front of the Swedish Parliament House every Friday, holding a sign that read, "School Strike for Climate." Soon she was joined by other Swedish students, and eventually young people around the world have joined in an international climate movement known today as Fridays for Future. There are now more than 13 million people who have participated in this protest against the lack of action on the climate crisis, all because Greta's story was shared on social media. We each have a voice, and when our voices unite, together we can create change and a better, more sustainable future.
All right. So that's powerful at the end. Together we can do so much. And to talk about another way of taking action, I'm going to turn it over to Natalia Mia, who will talk about her ways of taking action while as a student here at UNC Charlotte. And her talk is called Clean Water for All and the Legacies of Hurricane Maria. So I'll stop sharing and then hand it over to you, Natalia.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So this is called Taking Action, Clean Water for All and the Legacies of Hurricane Maria. Hurricane Maria was a humanitarian crisis that left Puerto Rico devastated. I remember that feeling of dread that just weighed my family down for weeks while we waited to hear from my family in Puerto Rico. As we watched the news, I remember seeing a satellite image that illustrated how Puerto Rico was no longer visible because there was no electricity and no lights on the island. It was as if my island had been wiped off of the planet Earth. So hello everyone, my name is Natalia Mejia and I am honored to be able to discuss today the UN Sustainable Goal 6, clean water and sanitation and how it affected Puerto Rico, specifically after Maria. And I also want to connect my talk with how young people can take action as global citizens. Goal 6 desires to ensure access to water and sanitation for all. Today, water is a privilege, not a right. 1 out of 3 people do not have access to clean drinking water. 2 out of 5 do not have access to water for basic hand washing, which is necessary today to combat COVID-19. And finally, 40% of the global population is affected by water scarcity. Hurricane Maria was the strongest storm to hit the island in almost a century. Strong evidence suggests that climate change is behind Hurricane Maria's devastating rainfall. Due to the warmer atmosphere and waters, storms like Maria are 5 times more likely than 70 years ago. Its estimated death toll reaching about 3,000 people on just the island of Puerto Rico has made it the worst natural disaster in recorded history to touch the island. About 250,000 people were left without access to water, and the hurricane laid waste to the electric grid, leaving over 3 million people without power. My aunt and cousins, they were forced to go bathe at my family's home because they didn't have access to water. We wouldn't hear from my family for weeks. For example, my aunt, she would have to drive to the top of a mountain to make a phone call on her cell phone. Many Puerto Ricans took to local rivers and lakes to bathe, only to find that they were cleansing in water that was infected by rats. Learning all this, I just felt compelled to take action and serve my global community. I had grown up every summer going to Puerto Rico. Since I was 13 years old, I had served at Centro de Bendición, a nonprofit in Puerto Rico, in San Juan specifically. This was a powerful, informative experience that volunteering at a summer camp, which had a mission to the youth and children in the San Juan cosmopolitan area. Investing all that time in Puerto Rico and the youth of Puerto Rico made me feel even more connected to my cultural heritage and my multicultural identity. Realizing I wanted to do my part, I connected with Andrea Badillo Perez, a Levine student who was also from Puerto Rico who felt compelled to take action. And together, during our first freshman year at UNC Charlotte, we created a nonprofit called 49ers for Puerto Rico and got started on flyers with lists of different supplies to donate. Networking with Centro de Bendición was very important because we knew that they would be on the ground working to get help to the people. Together, we spent an afternoon taking boxes to different buildings and halls with the flyers. In our classes, our professors allowed us to speak about 49ers for Puerto Rico and the humanitarian crisis. The response to Hurricane Maria was a hard pill to swallow. Many Americans were learning for the first time that Puerto Ricans were American citizens. The severity of the hurricane was being downplayed by the current administration, and relief was not coming to the island soon enough.
In certain areas, electricity was going to be out for months. People still didn't have access to clean water, and internet and phone cables were down. Fast forward to 2020, one of my aunts who lives on a farm still does not have access to water and has to go to another location to bathe. If you drive through the rural parts of Puerto Rico, you will be able to see homes with blue tarps. Centro de Bendición was recognized for their work in the community by organizations such as Unidos por Puerto Rico, the Tina Hill Award, and the Puerto Rican Congress. The youth of the island are leaving in droves, and many are struggling to cope mentally with the after effects of Maria and COVID-19. While it may not be visible, the island is still recovering from Hurricane Maria. My experience starting this nonprofit with a peer was sparked simply by my desire to help my community that was and is still struggling. I would encourage everyone to, no matter your age, to take action. The Sustainable Development Goals created by the UN helps you take action by providing the goals and the targets. No matter the circumstances, we all have it in us to rise to the call of help from our community, even if it should seem impossible. And while we have made substantial strides to provide clean water and reach the Sustainable Development Goals, it's our responsibility as cosmopolitan citizens to work towards taking care of each other and our planet. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and for listening to my story.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalia. And I have always found 49ers for Puerto Rico to be inspiring, and as well as thank you for also your inspiring talk and your work, your dedication. Please read Natalia's bio. She has applied to be a member of the Peace Corps and kind of still waiting to hear back, but just has accomplished so much and has made us in UNC Charlotte so proud. So thank you. So as we now kind of wrap things up for the conference, I want to share my screen for one last time here. And I have some final thoughts before we have an encore poetry read by one of the poet laureates, the first, I think, youth poet laureate in the United States. So I want to first of all ask you to please help me thank and join me in thanking all of our presenters for today. So either a round of applause or use your reaction to make sure that you can please present, or excuse me, please, yes, thank all of our speakers for today. I want to especially thank the Honors 3700 students who were willing to be bold and brave and trust me on this TedXCraverRoad event. I do want you to make sure you include it in your resume. And also just, I want to thank you for the really powerful presentations you put together. I do, one more time, want to acknowledge the Office of International Programs, Associate Provost, Assistant Provost Joel Gallegos, and the support that they provided, as well as the support from UNC Charlotte's Chancellor's Diversity Grant. Now the question is, now what, right? Now that the countdown has begun, as they talked about it in that very first video, I want to step back a little and just have you think about the value of coming together to raise awareness about climate change, to be able to investigate the world in the way that you did, and to share your perspectives as well as communicating your ideas. And then as we finished up this TedXCraverRoad, we focused on ways of taking action. And this is all part of developing what I call a critical cosmopolitan understanding of the world, or a global sustainable consciousness, where these different global competencies that are part of what we just did the last 2 hours as part of the TedXCraverRoad are ways that we can move forward together. And for my Honors 3700 students, I'd like to encourage you, if this is interesting work to you, if it's something that you would like to continue to be part of, to look into this Millennium Fellowship. It's a semester-long leadership development program. And it is a way that you can get connected more and more into the work of sustainable development goals, as well as an international network. I have put the link to the fellowship below. And then I also have a short video from the executive director and the founder of this Millennial Fellowship I'd like to share with you.
World leaders at the United Nations launched the Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by 2030. That's up to all of us in our generation. So we're counting on you, student leaders on campuses worldwide. If you want access to world-class training, connections, recognition, the Millennium Fellowship is for you. Take your social impact to the next level. Join us at millenniumfellows.org. We will see you there.
The Millennial Fellowship is just one way of continuing to move onward together towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. But as we said at the very beginning, it takes all of us to be able to do it, to take a triangulated approach, to be able to move onward. And I hope that this TEDx conference or this TedXCraverRoad event has helped to inspire you, like it's inspired me, about ways to be able to do that in education and in all the different fields that were represented today. I want to close with this TEDx poem that was written by Amanda Gorman. She is the inaugural Youth Poet Laureate for the United States. And this was something that is on the Countdown platform. I think you'll be inspired. I'll stick around for a little bit after the poem if anyone would like to have continued conversation or discussion. If not, I want to thank you so much for your time and participation, and I hope that you have a wonderful International Education Week. Thank you.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes what a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer, as we realize that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes. Some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor, who when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verb and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal to be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not, just as we chose to go to the moon. We know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weights of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as the weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers are in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is a hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Thank you again for joining us. And again, stick around if you'd like to have a little bit of conversation. I'm going to stop recording now.
That was such a beautiful poem.
Isn't it?
It was gorgeous. I was like, that's just so motivating and